Hello, everyone. I have hit the right button and we are back on. Yes, I might have just. We were doing a tryout and I clicked the wrong button. Now, this is a new computer, a new Windows install. So my camera works now. Fuck yes. My microphone probably works. Please do let me know if I sound like a robot. Yeah, we're back. We have stream 150, which is quite a number.
Impressive.
I would have never expected to get to this point. Thank you, everyone, for following along in this crazy fucking journey. Oh, thank you, Mark. And welcome back, Jake. It's been a while, and I think it's gonna be an interesting stream because even and I did not prepare at all for it.
No, I mean,
but we trust you.
This is the 115th time that we didn't prepare, Sebastiano.
I mean, sometimes I know what they're gonna talk about. Today I found out literally 10 minutes ago, so there's that.
So you sent me the thumbnails was like yesterday.
Yeah.
And then I opened thumbnails because I needed to do the tweets and everything. And I was like, oh, we're having Jake tomorrow? Nice. So this is the level of readiness. So yeah. Welcome back, Jake.
Yeah, I'm super prepared. I definitely spent nothing but the last week preparing for this. So
you have nothing better to do anyway. It's fine.
Fantastic. This is what we want from our guests.
Yes. Total preparedness.
Meticulously getting ready for the stream. So, but jokes aside, thank you for being with us. It's a bit of a spot schedule that we have lately.
Life got in the way.
Yeah, life it's weird, and it's very hard to find interesting guests. So thank you, Jake. And
yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I have tons of time now to schedule things.
So you're saying that you're gonna do it for us? I'm not sure.
Gonna do every week. Every week.
If you pay my invoice that I also send you, then I will happily do.
But there's an invoice. Can I pay in stickers?
Gonna be
yes, pizza stickers for sure.
Jake and the Italians is gonna be. And so, what are we doing today?
I forgot to. I'm pulling a little bit of a Zach Swears here. I have a dog in the room with me who is asleep and snoring. So if you hear something in the background,
I was wondering.
Yeah, I forgot to move. I meant to move her before this, but I forgot. So we're just gonna roll with it.
We're all generally fans of dogs. Even snoring dogs are fine.
Oh man, he's snoring.
That's quite a snore.
Seriously snoring. Okay.
Powerful.
Okay. So, snoring dog check.
Is your dog snoring even?
No, my dog is downstairs because there is food downstairs because the kid was having like a mid afternoon kind of break. Libraries.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, wait. You guys are so out of touch. Don't you have your little spiel to go through first?
Oh yeah. Thank you.
See, I told you I'm prepared.
Yeah.
Definitely more than anyone else.
Okay, so thank you everybody for being with us. Thank you for supporting us. There are plenty of ways you can support the stream. The easiest one is subscribing on Twitch, or we also have a subscription on Coffee if you want to pick something like on a monthly basis, and everything goes into funding the sticker disorder that Sebastiano has. And it's gonna allow him to create stickers that you can get for free at conferences over the course of the months. You also can subscribe, jokes aside, for free. If you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you can connect it to your Twitch account and then free subscription button is gonna pop up, and you can support us for free. And yeah, we also have a merch store if you want to buy like things for Christmas, like hoodie or mugs or anything that it's that you like that can support the show. Thank you.
I think we're done. Let's talk releases and testing, because that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I think I have sort of two angles to this that, or like two parts of this that I want to cover. So the first, to start with, I wrote a blog post a week ago, which I can wave my hands and will magically appear.
It's been waved in.
Okay. I actually wrote this internally for Cash App, trying to convince the engineers that we should start adopting the AndroidX beta versions of libraries. And we don't have to like litigate the whole thing here, but the gist is that in this paragraph, I cover how the betas of AndroidX are actually API stable, which is different than like a normal library, right? Like a normal library, there'd still potentially be API breaking changes if they even have pre-release, versions. You can't really rely on the API stability until like, I think in the example in the article, I use like 1.2.0 as the example version. But in AndroidX, this is different. They lock down their API stability in beta. And so from a compatibility standpoint, binary compatibility standpoint, which is actually almost the entire thing that semantic version cares about, this is effectively like the stable API version. And so they even claim that it's suitable for production use. And the only thing left is that they want to look for behavioral bugs. And so by introducing these versions, you essentially contribute to the testing. And even before it reaches beta, all of the AndroidX libraries are tested internally at Google in like Google's first-party apps, because once or twice a week, the latest source code is dropped into Google's giant monorepo, and their apps are built against the source code. So by the time it reaches beta, it's been, so I didn't zoom in on this one, but by the time it reaches beta, it's already been compiled and had all the unit tests and probably UI tests. I don't know what their testing strategy is. Potentially even released into production in their first-party apps. So they're meant to be extremely reliable already. But obviously, like, these are the most used libraries in the world, and when you drop into millions of code bases, you run into all different kinds of ways that people use them, and so there still will be bugs. But the argument that I make is basically, if you look at like I just merged a library the other day where it was like a 0.0. It was like a 1.0.5. And they basically had 5 patch releases in the span of 2 weeks after going 1.0, because people were catching, behavioral bugs. And what AndroidX aims to do is basically eliminate the need for those patch versions by having that testing be while the library is still in beta, so that by the time it hits 1.2.0 or whatever the stable version is, it's like ridiculously stable.
Yeah, there are no known issues at that point, at least no blockers for sure.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a catch-22, right? Nobody wants to have and the other thing is, right, the important thing that you said is this is not a bug-free library.
Yeah.
It's just that there's no known bugs, right? Like, you still will get bugs in some stable version of basically every single library, regardless of how much testing they do. It's really just about trying to mitigate that so that you don't see 5 patch releases.
Yeah.
There's like jokes. I mean, I don't know how old the people who are watching this are, but like in the support library days, you would joke that you would wait for like the 2 or 3 patch release after the major version because it was so unstable. Or like, I don't know, like Ubuntu, you joke about how you always wait for that like .1 patch release because there's only so many things you can do ahead of time to test. And I don't know, regardless, but if one of the inhibitors to updating libraries early is concerns about API compatibility. And one of the nice things about Android X is that they eliminate that concern. And so if you do choose to upgrade early to get more testing or whatever, you don't have to worry about the fact that it potentially will break on you. And I fully acknowledge that it's like a catch-22 where upgrading early potentially exposes you to more bugs. But the argument is really that like if nobody does this, then this whole system is pointless, and we should just be releasing as stable. And ultimately, if you have a comprehensive unit testing suite, UI testing suite, maybe manual QA or whatever that's covering your ass, right? Then the risk is actually pretty low. And that's also like, you can gauge that based on how mature the library is. Like for what we were doing at Cash App, I chose the Compose runtime as one that is like just ridiculously stable and well tested, that it's safe to upgrade into beta. And then like the core library, the Android, the activity, these real like maybe lifecycle, these real like sort of foundational, relatively small scoped libraries that the risk is pretty low. And then the other argument that I made was that not doing this has a pretty big cost, where if you wait until, and I'm not necessarily saying that you have to like deploy these into production, but the risk of not doing this means that if you, down here I talk about how like one of the things that we had was we were on Compose 1.8, Compose UI 1.8. We were bumping to Compose UI 1.9, and we ran into a bug that actually couldn't be worked around and prevented us from upgrading. And so we were stuck on 1.8, and we were basically waiting the 2 or 3 months or whatever until Compose UI 1.10 rolls around. But if we wait until 1.10 is stable without testing ahead of time, even though the bug that we found or filed was fixed, without actually validating that early in the release cycle of 1.10, you could have the same thing happen over again. Either the bug was not fully fixed because we were running into some, different version of it that they didn't cover in the fix, or the bug was actually fixed and a separate bug cropped up that also couldn't be worked around. And now, not only can we not upgrade to 1.9, but we can't upgrade to 1.10, and we're back in this cycle of waiting for 3 months or however long until a 1.11.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like change all your versioning policies to use betas. I mean, you could do that. It would probably still be okay because of the level of testing, but it's really think about whether or not you can afford to wait until particular things are stable. And so in addition to like the Compose runtime and the core and activity libraries, which are these stable, slower moving things that are less risky, we actually wanted to overcorrect on the more risky libraries by adopting them earlier in order to identify any problems that would be found as early as possible in the life cycle so that we could get them reported and hopefully fixed in that stabilization phase, to only wait, a couple weeks instead of a couple months.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the idea of, and this is also true for other libraries, right? Some libraries will have like release candidates, non-AndroidX libraries. In general, though, I don't see these a whole lot. It's almost that AndroidX goes out of their way to provide that API stability to make this actually easier on you, and something that you can conditionally adopt in certain libraries.
They surely do a lot of work to minimize the disruption that they cause people. Obviously, as you said earlier, you cannot guarantee that any piece of code will be completely free of bugs or issues of any kind, but there is really a lot of work behind it. And I think maybe one small clarification on the stuff you just covered is this doesn't mean that they don't do .1 releases. It just means that they're less necessary and frequent than they used to be before they went this way. Because now even the .1 release will have a alpha, beta, RC, and stable cycle.
Yeah, although a little birdie has told me that they're trying to get rid of that cycle for the patch releases to try and get them out more quickly. Like maybe only doing the release candidate and then stable. Just to like, because if you know you need it, right? Like you know there's the bug fix that necessitates the patch version, having to wait the 4 weeks or whatever to like do the dance is kind of can be unfortunate.
Yeah,
as opposed to getting it out in 2 weeks.
If it's just like a bug fix or two that is urgent, then you probably don't need the full dance.
Yeah, so like for us, what we ended up doing was configuring. We use Renovate to automatically create pull requests to bump dependencies, and so we opted in certain Maven coordinates like the androiddev compose runtime, androiddev core, etc., so that they would get pre-release versions automatically, and then it goes through just like any other versioning bump of a library. It might have people who own it and manually verify it, but otherwise we mostly rely on unit testing, UI testing, QA, and then just manual, people using the app in the 2 weeks or so before it actually makes it into production. That being said, if that is an uncomfortable thought, or that's not how you do dependency management, you don't have automatic updates, you do it manually or whatever, there still are other options. So I don't know what the URL for this is, but I'll be able to find it. Zach wrote this post about shadow jobs, which is the idea of creating different builds on your continuous integration system that do the dependency upgrades as in addition to doing like your full unit testing suite or whatever, without having to actually merge those updates into your source code. And so you could have a what he calls a shadow job, where maybe test the next version of the Android Gradle plugin, the beta. Although that would be hard right now because the next one's a major version where a lot of stuff breaks.
Yeah.
But in general, you could be looking at the next version of AGP. You could be testing with the next version of Compose UI. You could even be pulling like snapshot dependencies from libraries that you're really reliant upon. So like maybe test against the OKHTTP snapshot or something. And having a failure here is not the worst thing in the world. It doesn't impact anyone in production. You still have to have somebody that's monitoring the shadow job, and ideally whose responsibility it is to be looking at what the actual failure it is, determining whether or not it's something you're doing wrong, something the library has broken, whether it's an actual bug that you need to report, right? Like there's still the burden of like root causing whatever failures occur, and then taking the correct either preventative action or reporting it upstream or whatever.
But the idea is that you don't need to do root cause in the production code, but you do it on a parallel job that has low cost and will tell you, hey, you cannot upgrade this library because that breaks.
Yeah. So his examples, new versions of the JDK, new versions of AGP, and at the time of when this was written, it sounds like Kotlin was undergoing its transition to JVM-IR backend. It's an old post, but like there's absolutely, other than this being like a dated reference, the example where it's like there's nothing sort of time. There's nothing about the time that it was written that somehow makes it not true for today. Because AGP 9 is going to hit in like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, and everyone's going to be in a lot of pain if they haven't been at least looking at it ahead of time, because so much is changing and breaking. So yeah, that's just another example. Another way to conditionally look into adopting these earlier versions of the libraries while also trying to minimize their impact. That's funny. The references in here are funny.
Oh, nice.
But look, he even has AndroidX, or Kotlin does a great job of publishing early versions as well. So there's no shortage of example dependencies that you can use either in your app or as part of your tool chain for setting things like this up.
It reminds me a bit of the Dependabot, right, that you have on GitHub on a lot of. It's more like a web thing, I guess. I see it more on a. Then you end up with a pull request, with the bumped version of the library, and then when you pair it with cloud agents in the era of AI, you also have somebody that eventually tries to make things works when the thing doesn't build, right? So the agent tries to actually come up with a solution if something is not working out of the box, and then you get a report. So that's the interesting part. But something that I wonder, because do we have so many androiddev libraries and compose something libraries, do every team at Google have the same approach? So is it like are they doing it the same way for every team? It's like a convention that they have when it comes to release, or do you feel that some library are a bit better at keeping the compatibility or the overall feeling of stability in the libraries?
Do you mean the teams publishing the libraries?
I mean, yeah, at some point you have to release, right? So and you decide that the status of the code base, it doesn't match the quality requirements that you want for the release, or we agree that the beta has to be stable more than beta, right? Is it like a decision that is homogeneous across teams, as far as you know, or is more like most of them are doing it, but it's not official, right?
Yeah, so from what I remember, I mean, obviously this could have changed in the however many, it's been 5 years, I think, since I was on that team. But in general, some of the core things have not changed, and they're public, so you can go look at them. So, for example, one of the things we can go look at is the source code to the support library. And so you might say, like, how do I know I can trust that the betas are always actually API stable? And if you go to a library they have a folder basically that is a dump of the binary signatures of the library. And so if I were to actually go, collection's actually in alpha right now. But if there's a library that's in beta and you were to go and try and just say add an API, which is like a perfectly binary compatible change, I'm adding a new function to an existing class. Because the library is in beta, well, the first thing that's going to happen is the tooling is going to see that you changed the API and you haven't updated these definition files, because there's also one that's current, which is just like whatever's in the source code. This is the version of the dump of its API. The tool's going to notice that those have diverged, and it's going to say you need to rerun the tool that dumps compatibility. But then when you go and do that, it's actually going to fail and tell you that if we imagine that collection was still in beta, it's going to fail and it's going to say, because this library is in beta, you're not allowed to create any API changes, even if they're compatible. You're not allowed. They force you not to be able to add
Not
new
even
APIs,
adding.
and you would have to, even if you're just adding, you would have to wait until it reached the next alpha cycle.
So, and that will be 1.6 alpha, for instance.
Yeah. So they put,
in this case,
they put tooling in place to validate at least the API surface component of their stability guarantees. Yeah. They gave a talk. There's basically just tons of tooling in place that enforce their conventions as much as possible, because there are so many. I mean, there's hundreds of AndroidX libraries. If you go look, it's like so many more than you probably remember. The only way that they can do that in a way that's reliable and repeatable is by tooling it. And so they have, if you go in their build source, they have like this massive plugin.
Okay. So
that
basically,
just does all their policy.
It's not up to the team. It's something that is across the board. If you're building a library, an AndroidX library, these are the rules, and those are the guarantees for us.
You still get to determine when you move from alpha to beta. So, you're working on some new major feature of an existing library. You can work on that for 2 weeks and have 2 alphas and then move into beta. Or you could work on it for, well, hopefully not, but you can work on it for 2 years and have however many number of alphas that would be. Now they have some things in place to try and nudge you. So like one of the complaints historically was library stayed in alpha too long. And so RMS has like a spreadsheet or something that tracks how long, the libraries that have been in alpha the longest, and they try and nudge them along. And the same for beta and RC, right? Just because you reach beta and you have API stability, you could just keep churning on trying to find bugs, but then, at some point there's diminishing returns. You just need to get it out there so that, because not everybody is going to buy into the idea that you can,
because people are waiting for the stable. So if you have a 6 months super stable beta, you are basically slowing down people that are waiting for the beta. Just throw the stable out and then start over. So that makes sense. But also, I like the idea that they, in a way, kind of force progress. They nudge people if the alpha has been in alpha for too long. So that's good.
Yeah. So that's, I would say, the AndroidX libraries it's a very interesting case because they do a lot of work to try and make this a benefit to you all. Like I should say we all, right? It's like, and so it's fine if you just ignore them all and use stables, but I don't think that should be true for everybody. There needs to be a subset of people that have the right infrastructure in place for the automated testing, can afford manual QA and that kind of stuff that's really hitting the app, or like you can take that risk and get the benefits from adopting the things earlier, which is getting your bugs fixed at a more rapid pace and not getting stuck on old versions. And so there are benefits, but it's trade-offs no matter what. This is not a universal. I mean, the my blog post is titled in a very like absolutist way, but
So
ultimately it is
that's
your
clickbait.
decision. Yeah,
It's more,
it is a little bit. I actually,
but it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, as for what you said, it makes sense because betas are less scary than they probably used to be when it comes to androiddev. That's the thing, right? So you're not doing cowboy. It's more like it's just get ahead. Yeah.
there you go.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
This is like the less clickbaity title.
Yeah.
And even that is like you don't necessarily need to avoid the android experience.
But to be fair, I probably worked in very small teams when it comes to this kind of decisions. But I never worked with people where like no, we need to be on the stable, right? It was more like I need the new shit as soon as possible. So
yeah.
YOLO alpha is a bit too much kind of thing, but beta is fine, right? Especially beta 3, whatever. I mean, beta 3 is basically 2 weeks before stable, right? In most mindset where when you think about it, right? I mean, if we was, especially now that you say that APIs are not changing and it's pretty much the same API that you will get in the stable, is more like I'm getting fewer bugs. But again, we always had very, 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 I don't know, non-stable bias for when it comes to libraries, especially androiddev, because you needed the fixes, right? So you were, in my experience, you were always waiting for a fix of some sort. So you wanted it as soon as possible. Yes, it's a trade-off. Maybe I'm exchanging a bug for a bug fix, but maybe the bug that I'm getting is not affecting my product, while the bug fix is actually affecting the products. It and so it's a nice thing that they are way more stable than you would expect, to be honest.
Yeah, I do like the idea of the new shiny thing. It's less true in like core, but for Compose UI and Material and Foundation, like we absolutely were always just waiting for some that new shared element transition thing, or some new. Oftentimes, it was around animation or like the layering capabilities, where we wanted it, and then we would get burned because we would wait until it was stable, start using it, and discover unrelated show shopping, unworkaroundable bugs that then would force us to wait another 3 months or whatever. And after a pattern, after like this happening 2 or 3 times, and having to make compromises and like trying to convince ourselves that like, okay, that bug's not terrible if people actually see it in production, in order to just get access to the new shiny APIs that we actually needed or like wanted for the new product features or whatever. This is a solution. Gave us a solution where once we got off of that vicious cycle, we said, or like the argument here is basically we want to adopt these sooner so that we, despite taking on a little bit of risk, we actually long term are going to mitigate a bunch of potential bad things happening. So it's trade-offs, and so you need to decide as either an individual or as a company where your line is, where you draw the line, or where you're comfortable maintaining that balance. And for some people, they might have the flexibility to adopt a lot of things in beta because they have really robust infrastructure in place for testing. And for others, when you're smaller, you're scrappier, you don't have the same amount of resources, um, you may not, and you may choose to do like maybe just put a shadow job to just see if the Compose UI betas even compile and pass your what little unit tests or whatever you have so far.
Yeah.
And that's still a signal that maybe if it starts failing, you could spend an hour or two going to see if it is something that's actually show stopping or it's something you can sort of ignore and defer. It's going to be different for everyone, but I do think just knowing that the betas, at least of Android X, are affording you much more than you may otherwise realize in the fact that they are already API stable, and they're relatively bug free. I mean, like Google has, I don't know how many first party apps they probably have, but they have internal apps and they have all kinds of they build everything from source. And so they're literally dropping the latest source of Android X into their monorepo and having, let's say, 40 Android apps, and some of the, basically the Android apps that are probably the most used in the world being built and tested against it. So by the time it hits beta, they are really stable.
Yeah, and that also means
so
that all the automation runs on all of those apps. The manual QA also runs on those apps. So a bunch of bugs that you never heard of never reached you because they were caught in the monorepo before they made it to a release.
Yeah, I probably a lot of people have had, if you've filed a bug or found a bug and seen it like duplicated onto another, and then you go click on that bug and it's like you don't have permission because that's Gmail or somebody else that found that bug, filed it internally, and it's already been taken care of. So yeah, even though that feels annoying because you don't get to see it, it's actually the system sort of working in your favor usually.
Yeah, I would also add one thing to this discussion, which is if you only ever use stable versions, you never have an opportunity if a bug sneaks through that impacts you to have it fixed for you, which you can still do with alphas and betas. So if you're using, say, Compose 1.11 alpha, whatever it is that it's out now, and you find that, oh, actually, I don't know, the basic text field has a bug, and that's a problem for us, and you report it, there is a chance, especially if it's a bad bug, that it will be fixed before it reaches stable, and thus before you have to wait a full cycle again, as Jake was saying earlier. And that is obviously not everyone can do it. There are more change and risk averse, especially organizations than others. But if nobody uses the alphas and the betas, I mean, they're still published for a reason, which is people should try them. Obviously, the idea of shadow jobs is also useful because if it breaks in the CI, then even if it's just compiling, at least you know that's coming. But obviously, the more automation and tests you have, the better equipped you are to figure those out in advance, and then reporting those and then getting them fixed, so you don't again fall in the trap of having to wait 3 months or 6 months for the next stable version.
Yeah. So the next thing I want to cover as part of this, Zach kind of touches on at the very end here, which he calls internal changes, which is basically saying that like if you consume a library from like a sibling team that builds a reusable internal component or something, you can use the same mechanism. One of the interesting things about Android X is if you go to a library, so we'll go to like the Compose runtime and look at its build, it will actually have dependencies against released versions of other Android X libraries. So here it's saying that the runtime is depending on the released version of the collection library. The collection library, which we talked about earlier, is in alpha for 1.6. And so if I make a change to the collection library and introduce a bug that's not caught by the collection unit tests, but the compose runtime is somehow exercising, normally because of how this build is set up, because it's not depending on it as a sibling project like it does the runtime annotations, it's depending on the published binary of the latest stable version. Normally that bug would potentially make it all the way into 1.6 stable, and then it would only get found if, or when I should say, the runtime eventually bumped to 1.6. And so I don't know how to show this really, but one of the things that the AndroidX build does as part of the conventions that they impose on all of the projects contained within it is that they have a separate run of their, basically, it's not a shadow job because it's actually blocking, but it's another like shard on their CI system that replaces all of the pointers to public Maven coordinates of an AndroidX library with the relative project reference, so that on CI they do actually test the latest version of Compose runtime against the latest version of collection. And that happens throughout the whole dependency graph. So if we were to go up to like material 3, it probably depends on Compose UI, I don't even know what the versions are, 110, and then that depends on foundation. Foundation depends on runtime. Runtime depends on collection. So let's say I put a bug in collection that is not hit by its unit tests, but that material 3 somehow hits through its use of just like normal Compose APIs. Like imagine how long it would take if they had to wait for like runtime to bump and then foundation to bump runtime and then UI to bump foundation and then material to bump UI. It would take like months before this bug ever actually got discovered. But because of how they're doing this in CI, they're redirecting the entire transitive dependency graph of the AndroidX dependencies to point to the latest build. So when material 3 is having its, like a change in material 3 is building, it's getting the latest Compose UI, the latest foundation, the latest runtime, and the latest collection, and all the other libraries it depends on to ensure that it's not breaking something. And the inverse is actually true. So even if you're just changing collection, the downstream dependency graph is also running. So you change collection, you actually end up running the material 3 tests against the latest like head code version of the code, in order to ensure that you're not introducing behavioral compatibility problems through some untested, bug essentially, or just behavior, right? Like it's very much the XKCD of all behavior becomes load bearing or whatever, with the guy who's like holds down the space key and it pegs his CPU at 100% and that heats his house or whatever. So that's a cool feature that they have. But it's specific to their infrastructure. So that plugin I showed earlier, and also their CI system. The combination of those two, basically it adds a flag you can pass. So it's like -p, and that's like max versions equals true or something. You can, if you ever contribute, you might get a failure and it will tell you how to run it locally. But that's great for them. But then like there's other libraries that have the similar sort of connectedness of the like graph. An example is like OKIO, which OKHTTP depends on, which retrofit depends on, and also like there's Mashi, which depends on OKIO, and like you get this like suite of libraries essentially that all have intermixing dependencies, and we actually had this problem as well, where occasionally we would do something in one library and not find out that it broke something until we bumped it and we released it and then bumped it in the downstream library. So I built this thing to try and replicate what Zach talks about here, where he talks about it as internal changes, but it's really like you can still also do this with open source public. Like it doesn't actually have to be internal. And you were kind of talking about this with the bot that like automatically bumps stuff. So basically what I've done is, I don't even know where to show this. Well, I'll show you the projects first because I rendered a nice pretty graph. It's basically just all of my personal open source projects, and then, oh yeah, that's what I want. I want a really tiny image. There, that's a little better. So it's all of these libraries that like I either directly maintain or sort of indirectly maintain, like contribute to somewhat significantly. And it is essentially just a GitHub Actions setup that will, every day it will go and clone all of these projects and then do work to like update and depend on the snapshot of the other one. So it seems like the rootiest component here is Kotlin Poet in this like graph, and then downstream of that we can see like paraphrase, or I'll find a better one here over here. So like Mashi depends on Kotlin Poet because it has code generation for the adapters, and then we go over here and we see like retrofit depends on Mashi, and then downstream of retrofit is like a personal project of mine. Or down here, molecule. So like molecule sample app depends on retrofit. So like you could somehow, so like molecule probably also has a Mashi dependency. I'm not following this, but the idea being that like that same thing could happen where we could put some weird edge case in Kotlin Poet, render like invalid syntax only if you create like a certain JSON object or whatever that might exist in the sample app of this project. And we wouldn't find that bug until Kotlin Poet had a release, and then Mashi bumped Kotlin Poet and it had a release, and then Molecule bumped its dependency on either Mashi, or if it depends on it transitively through retrofit. You get the idea. But the idea is the same thing that AndroidX was doing, is take this giant dependency graph of all these projects and have them all build against each other as snapshots in order to discover these problems ahead of time. And so it does this with two mechanisms, because I also don't want to do any of this manually. It defines the list of projects in a made up syntax, this YAML file that I built. So if we go look at molecule, it has a...
Is this file generated, or did you have to build it?
No, I wrote this file. And what happens is I wrote it based on, it would be nice, you could generate some of it. These things don't change that often.
Mm-hmm.
So you could do what Renovate is doing and like parse the Gradle files and the libs version TOML file in order to discover these things. But in practice, they don't change that much. So I, for now, have just wrote them all hard-coded.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically, this is saying that molecule depends on retrofit, and that this is the key in the TOML file that contains the version of retrofit. So what happens is what's actually generated that you would not want to maintain come on.
You need a faster laptop.
This is what in the pre-stream we were talking about how I'm on a because I'm no longer employed, I lost access to my M4 MacBook, and I'm now on a 2017 Intel MacBook, which is very slow.
It's kind of a miracle we're not hearing the fans.
They are on. I can hear them.
Yeah, we can hear the dog, but not
so
the
here's
fans.
like here's the thing that's generated. Yeah, I said it was the dog snoring. It's actually just my laptop snoring with the band on.
It's a feature we all forgot about that was in old
Okay, so
internet.
Oh yeah, there we go. We made the same joke. Very nice. So this is what it generates the GitHub action. That's, I don't know, we're at line 150 and we're maybe like 10% down. So it's probably 2,000 lines ish, where it takes the dependency graph and mirrors it into a GitHub's action graph. So like the retrofit build is going to run first.
Mm-hmm.
It checks out this repository, which has like scripts and helpers. It checks out molecules repository, sets up Java, sets up Gradle, and then here's like where it goes and updates external dependencies. So like it'll depend on the pre-release version of Kotlin and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then each of these, I'm trying to find the retrofit. Here's retrofit. Each of these GitHub actions will zip up the output and add them as an artifact. And so because this one depends on retrofit, I can download the Maven repository that retrofit created to this build, and then I patch the version that it was. So it's going to be like 3.1 snapshot or whatever. I patch that into the current TOML. And then somewhere down here, I'll show you because I run a diff so that I can see what changed. But then somewhere down here, I run Gradle right here. I then just run the normal Gradle. I run a publish to create the artifact, and then down here I run build to run everything else, run the unit tests and all that stuff.
And this is the same structure for all of them, essentially.
Yeah, I zoomed in and it took like 5 seconds. So this is all, generated 2,500 line action. And I'll show you what it looks like when it runs.
That's assuming it wants to render the page.
Yeah, the other thing about this, and the shadow jobs thing, just in general, for some degree, is like you have to kind of, there's like people that have the email icon on like their iPhone that has 50,000 messages or something, and then there's people when it changes to 1, they open it up, read the email, and then dismiss it so that the red dot goes away.
That's me.
You have to be okay with the fact that the CI build will like not always be succeeding, and just sort of, at least depending on how many projects you have.
I mean,
so yeah, we'll see.
I think it's part of,
we're right in the middle of the Kotlin.
So a failing CI is part of the joy of the tool, right? I mean, because if it fails, it caught something, maybe, right? So I can live with that.
I guess it also depends how it's failing, and if you can identify
it's a bad time
with a filter whether it's a relevant failure or just a fluke.
Yeah, it's a really bad time to look at this repo because I'm in the middle of doing the Kotlin 2.3 upgrade to compiler plugins, which are very tightly tied to the version of Kotlin. So you can see like Burst is failing. It's a Kotlin compiler plugin. If we scroll down, we'll find other Kotlin compiler plugin stuff. But okay, so this is like today's build of Molecule, where it downloaded retrofit and then patched it, and here's like the result of all this operation. So the other thing I'm doing is I'm adding Maven local to all the build scripts with just a sed command. So I basically find Maven Central and then I just prepend Maven local. So it's showing you that happened, and then this is the version toml.
Mm-hmm.
So OKHTTP is being bumped to 5.4.0 snapshot, retrofit to 3.1.0. Here's the AGP being bumped to 9.0. Compose is being bumped to RC1.
So it bumps everything.
And
It's not
Turbine.
bumping just the library that you changed. It bumps everything.
Well, it's not bumping like assert K, for example. So it's not bumping everything.
Yeah. So like it's only bumping either external libraries, external dependencies that I've opted into, which is like AGP, Compose Runtime, Kotlin Gradle plugin, Docker. That might be it. We can go look in a second. And then otherwise, it's only projects I care about. So like I work on Turbine, I work on OKHP, I work on Retrofit.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the ones that are getting changed to be snapshots because it's then building against the latest version. And then, yeah, this was a successful one. So it does the publish to Maven local to create, where the Maven local that has the snapshot of whatever molecules version is. And then down here somewhere, it does the full build. So this will run the unit tests and all, like formatting checks and all that stuff. And then it somewhere, right here is where it grabs the Maven local repository and bundles it up as an artifact. So if I scroll back here, I'll be able to see all the zip files for all the versions down at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So I could go grab this snapshot and it would have, it's almost an accident, but because I unpacked like retrofits Maven local into, home.m2, and then I install molecule into it. It was almost an accident, but you end up creating the like entire transitive dependency graph of snapshots that you need within this zip file, which is kind of nice because if something goes wrong and I want to test it, I don't have to like build all those things locally and figure it out. I can just grab this and it has all of the snapshots that it tested against.
And you would replace the M2,
which is a fun
repository locally, or you would just add an entry for a custom Maven?
Yeah, I'd probably just blow it away. I delete that thing like once a month, just because it gets filled up with stuff that never goes away.
That is true.
So this ran. I don't know if I'm not going back to the action. It'll take too long. This runs every day at like 9:30 in the morning, and it takes a couple hours. So this one took 2 hours. It can go anywhere from 1 hour to 4 hours, depending on how many like caches were hit and what changed and all that. And the reason it runs on a schedule is because there's no, unlike when you push a change to your code base, like if I make a change in retrofit, that CI is going to run in response to the pull request or the new commit being merged. But this repository is like completely separate from anything else. And so otherwise nothing would trigger it. Like it doesn't know that there was new retrofit commits that it then needs to go build the dependencies for. And so it just runs on a schedule every single day and will pick up whatever the latest is. And that's why it changes so widely too. It's like if nothing changed, then the cache will just be the same bits and it will be instant. Otherwise it will have to rebuild everything.
Yeah, and to be honest, this sort of stuff doesn't make sense to run on every single PR or change that lands.
Yeah, because I have so many projects in here. Like this is a lot. I just because I have a lot of stuff that I care about and work on. And if somebody's going to recreate this, I would expect them to have fewer and it be simpler. But it's funny because like I'll go and put a PR on like one of my personal projects in the morning, and the workflow like won't run for an hour. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, is GitHub down or whatever? And I'm like, oh no, it's the cron job is running and it has like 50 jobs that are using up all my workers, and I just have to wait. So I probably should switch it to run at like 3 in the morning or something.
That would make sense.
The other fun thing, which we kind of talked about, was for the external dependencies. So I'll show the list of external dependencies. The cron job is for running and picking up new changes to what I call internal dependencies, like projects that are being built as part of this system. And then there's external dependencies, which are projects that are not part of the system, but that I want to essentially build against. So yeah, I was pretty close. The Maven publish plugin and KSP, I think, were the only two I missed. So these are like the ones that are used in a ton of different projects, and I want to ensure that I have compatibility with them when they bump.
And you use
And
renovate
so
to
because
bump
these are
the versions?
defined in a way, yeah, so because they're defined in the normal way in a version toml, like there's no Gradle build in this project. But I have an empty settings.gradle because that tricks renovate enough to think that it actually is a Gradle build. And therefore it will monitor those Maven coordinates and make pull requests to bump them.
I see.
And so, yeah, this was the thing earlier. So painful navigating around these JavaScript. I mean, my website has no JavaScript, and it's still blazing fast to navigate around on this old ass laptop. But like GitHub, and I tried going through Google Drive to find something.
All the client side stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's 100% JavaScript. So if you're doing this either to do like the AndroidX betas internally and you're using Renovate, or you want to kind of create a similar setup for a handful of projects, you have to tell Renovate that you want these pre-release versions. So this is the first one. This is the first one. Ignore unstable, false. Lovely double negative. You're opting into the unstable versions. By default, it only will update unstable versions if you already are on one, and then you'll ride it to stable, and then you'll just stay at stable. But by adding this flag, it will then notice when a new unstable version, like a 1.60 alpha 1 of collection comes out, it will notice that and offer to upgrade. Respect latest false. If you do ignore unstable, you basically have to have respect latest, and it essentially means that it no longer it doesn't assume that the most recent is the most unstable. So like what usually happens is an AndroidX library will branch at the RC stage, and then they might actually start publishing the alpha 1 of the next version. And then the stable version will come after. The stable of like 1.5 will come after 1.60 alpha 1. And if you, and that means the latest version in that case would be 1.50, not 1.60, even though in semantic versioning 1.60 is newer. So you basically have to tell it that you want semantic version ordering, not just whatever the latest is. And then everything else is sort of opt-in, where I want separate PRs for if like a new minor release of something comes out. So like AGP will often do like a patch release and the next minor release very close together. And this will create separate PRs instead of only trying to update you to the minor release. Because usually you can just slam the patch release because it's probably fine, and then the minor release or the next major release requires like you to actually do some work. And then, yeah, these other ones just remove the rate limiting. And then everything else is, because I also bumped the Java version. So this automates the, when JDK 26 comes out in March, it will, I'll get a PR against this, there's a .java version file. It will send a PR updating the version from 25 to 26, and then that will assuredly fail because like Gradle won't support it, and the Kotlin Gradle plugin won't support it, and it'll be like a month before they get updates, and I'll be able to merge it.
I see.
So yeah, you can see this in action right now, where AGP and Kotlin are both in their pre-release stage, and they're both somewhat painful. Usually what happens is like the if everything builds, I'll just merge it. So like well, Gradle's another good example.
I see you
but
have
like the Compose
red CI there.
Yeah, that's because I'm in the middle of. That's why I said it's a bad time to look, because I'm in the middle of fixing both AGP9 and Kotlin 2.3 compiler plugins, and so like some of the projects have merged updates. So like Burst has merged its 2.3 update, but like Zipline or something hasn't. And so basically the build will always be red, because either the trunk build will be red because the Kotlin version, or the burst is on 2.3, but then all of its downstream projects are on 2.2. And then the PR for 2.3 burst will be green because it's on the right version, but then like a downstream project like Zipline will be failing because its compiler plugin hasn't been updated. So that's what this is like a very turbulent time for the repo, I would say. If we looked at it like 6 months ago, every PR was green. Every day the cron job build was green. It was like blissful for 6 weeks, and then inevitably it just sort of flips and goes
then
the other
there's
way.
like Kotlin Conf, and there's Google I/O, and then shit happens, and everyone releases at the same time, literally on the same day sometimes.
Yeah, so if I go into, if I try and get to Kotlin 2.3, oh, I don't know why burst is red. It should be green. But yeah, you can see like here just this morning. So like this is red. This is a compiler plugin. But if I go to, I just fixed this morning. I don't think I merged it though. But I'm basically in the process of going around and doing AGP and Kotlin Gradle plugin updates so that
you should bug the repository owner to merge your PR. I'm waiting for a review. Whee!
So now if I were to go back here and rerun this, it would succeed. It's going to rerun everything that failed.
See you in 2 hours.
Yeah, but that's like another one. So now tomorrow or whenever, you know, I will have like pushed the problem further down the dependency graph. And the idea is by the time KGP 2.3 is out, and by the time AGP 9 is out, like, because we're working on libraries that have, you know, decent adoption, it's nice. It feels good when you're a consumer of those to not have to wait 4 months or even 4 weeks, you know, for somebody to get around to figuring out AGP compatibility or bumping the compiler plugin to support the new, you know, the breaking changes in KGP. And so this lets us get a little bit ahead of them. It's a reminder to go look at some point. It, you know, Renovate will keep that PR open. And so like as Kotlin's been going through the betas and the release candidates, it pushes to that same PR. And notifies me that like, hey, this build's still failing. And yeah, you can ignore it if you're okay with the red being there for a while. I've had a busy couple weeks, so a lot of this stuff is getting updated. But hopefully, by the time in a week or two, when KGP is out, we'll basically be ready to go with all the compiler plugins. And in a couple weeks, when AGP is out, I think all the projects I think the only projects that are left broken by AGP are like samples and not libraries. So I think we're pretty good to go, but it's it's a fun sort of setup that provides a bunch of benefits to us, and I've automated as much as possible. It's not 100% because ideally you would figure out the dependency graph on your own. Like Renovate could really do this if they wanted to, but they don't expose enough to build your own. So you have to re-implement a decent amount. Like they have all this knowledge of the dependency graph and that, and they have the tie-in already with the GitHub like the GitHub app that has the approval to like the authentication credentials to be able to make PRs and stuff. Because it could just be maintaining PRs on all of these repos and then having them sort of auto merge when it goes stable, and only the unstable stuff stays in a PR, or I don't know. There's I think there's a lot you could do here, but this is sort of what I built so far, and it essentially is the same principle as the AndroidX betas are okay to use, but applied to what otherwise are only somewhat related libraries. I mean, I could build anybody's library as part of this system. I'm building like Cache App stuff and Square stuff, and SQLite is in here somewhere. And I'm only related to those projects because I work on them and I care about them a little bit. I could just as easily be building random projects on GitHub as part of this system, or somebody else could be building our projects and letting us know. Actually, that is sort of interesting. We talk about how Google builds AndroidX from source. They actually build all of their dependencies from source. So if Google internally uses a library that you work on, sometimes they'll like reach out and let you know that something that you've done, even if it's unreleased, has broken internally one of their apps or something, which is always fun. So they basically have this system in place, but for every single library that they use in their entire dependency graph.
But that's the perfect time where you get a sponsorship on GitHub from Google.
Yeah,
Like,
if only.
You just broke our build. Oh, look at that.
Oh,
Go figure. How that happened? Anyway, sponsorship and pull requests are welcome. And that's it.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to solve open source funding here in the next 5 minutes, but
no, unlikely.
Yeah, that relationship is definitely interesting. So, yeah, at the very least, the whole point is to try and provide a little bit more of a service to the people consuming these things. And so I do think that is part of the reason why we can take on the responsibility of like the AndroidX ones a little bit where possible, as almost like it helps not only you, right? It like helps your fellow Android developer, because potentially the thing you run into might actually be a fix that somebody else needed, but they don't know that they need because they don't have the capability to move to stable. And by you, the person with more resources and infrastructure at your disposal. So yeah, it's not ubiquitous advice. You can pick and choose sort of what level of tolerance you have to this extra effort, and also how risk averse you are. And don't necessarily make that choice and then stick with it either. It can be a fluid thing. You can always go back to just doing the stable versions if you're in a particular tumultuous period of change, or if things are relatively calm and you're weeks ahead of your iOS counterparts and you have little to work on,
As it tends to
maybe
happen.
turn that dial back to the betas, and yeah.
I think in general
There you go. Look, it went
for
green.
someone, oh, let me share that again. For someone that has a lot of libraries that they're maintaining, be that you as a person or an org, like a company that owns a lot of libraries, it is useful to be aware of cross compatibility, especially if your libraries are a product. Say you're a company that owns an SDK like Android Axis, for example. It is good to make sure that you are on top of, even just not breaking your own stuff would be good. But in general, in a wider sense, is the I think that if you are risk averse, then you need to invest in your infrastructure to make sure that risk doesn't creep in when you're not looking at stuff, because it's impossible to keep up with all of this stuff by hand. Yeah, I think it's a really cool system.
It's not universal, but like your inability to tolerate the extra risk of the beta is almost itself indicative of like the thing you should be investing in, which is the ability to take on extra risk occasionally.
Yeah.
Because you have missing coverage somewhere. And like, so you don't actually have to take the betas on, but maybe you should focus on fixing the thing that would otherwise prevent you from taking the betas on, which is usually just comprehensive, testing.
Yeah.
Which is hard, right? Like nobody's saying that it's easy.
It's a lot of work.
Especially, yeah.
But it's an investment.
That then becomes the thing that you can focus on instead of necessarily this. And then maybe some point that investment can pay off by you needing that new shiny thing and being able to move to the beta with confidence because you know that it doesn't come with other regressions. And you can just ride it back to stable for now. And you don't have to do this wild, everything's always beta system. But it means, especially since it's API stable, like that you have the confidence in making that move without it being something that is a real big unknown in terms of the bugs it might introduce.
Yeah, and having tests and coverage in general is like, it's not even for the releases, for the dependencies and whatnot. It's just like, did someone break my shit in the team while I was not looking?
Yeah. That's right. It's as much for external dependencies as it is for your own code.
Yeah, and I guess especially if you're in a monorepo, that tends to happen.
There is no well, right. There is no distinction between external code and your own code when it comes to the produced artifact, right? Like it's all just code that ships in your app, and so your users aren't going to care whether that was a bug you wrote or a bug that somebody at Google wrote.
Yeah.
To them, it's your app not working, and so it ends up being what you said. And if anything, the monorepo that ships everything from source, they just like embrace the fact that it's all their code through that system, and also paying a bunch of people year round to work on making that tenable. But yeah, when it comes to normal developer builds, like that split doesn't exist. I mean, it sort of exists in the sense that like we build those things differently, but yeah, ultimately it all ships in your app. So
yeah. It is your responsibility for not having noticed the bug before it reached production, and it's your responsibility because like if you think, oh, I'm building an app or I'm building a website and my mom uses it. My mom doesn't understand what a dependency is. She doesn't care. It's like, can I log in and can I buy whatever I'm trying to buy or do whatever I'm trying to do? If yes, mom loves me. If not, mom is upset, and you don't want to upset your mom, right? I think in general it helps a
Nope, you
lot
got
to
it.
frame things in terms of not upsetting your mom or your grandma or your whatever.
I mean, especially before Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do.
I mean, you need more tests. You need more tests then.
in your life.
More tests. Nice.
Cool. We are at time, but I mean, if there are questions, I guess we can answer them. Otherwise, we can free up Jake to go and. Oh, by the way, dog.
Oh yeah, here we'll do. Let me make myself bigger so I can see what I'm pointing at. I'll probably take
Very,
an hour.
very
to fill
important
that window
thing.
to
Yeah,
the size.
clamoring. Dog, dog, dog. Oh, loud pup.
We're getting baked in the sun.
Oh, it's a French bulldog or something.
Yep.
Nice.
It is the Frenchie.
Nice.
She doesn't
Suspiciously
even
looking.
know. You're live. You're live, French.
People can see you.
Now she's not snoring
Huh?
when we're done.
Of course. You know that the thumbnail for this episode is gonna be a dog snoring, right?
Yep.
Probably.
She's the star. She knows it.
Classic dog. Cool.
Well,
Go.
no. I was just thanking Jake and everybody in the chat. This was super interesting, very knowledgeable as usual. Thank you. But also the fact that normal people can use this in a scaled down version, because not everybody's a psychopath like you with 15,000 repositories. No offense.
You're a
but
psychopath in the good way.
yeah, a psychopath in a good way, right? But jokes aside, I feel it can be incredibly useful, because Sebastiano has pointed out a lot of people have tiny libraries, reusable stuff that maybe they use across a handful of pet projects, and thing breaks. So this is cool. It's a very I imagine myself with a very smaller graph.
Mhm.
But the idea is there. Thanks.
But even if it's just your app, just doing the thing of I'm gonna try and run the shadow jobs to see if it breaks tomorrow, because next week I'm planning to update to, I don't know, the new Compose version, because I need the new shadow API. At least I know that's gonna be broken when I do.
Yeah, I think Android Gradle plugin's a great one for shadow job. Like, you just always want to be looking at what the next one is and how it's probably going to break your build. And then just like it's nice having that confidence in like the real load bearing libraries like Compose, that just nothing is going to immediately break, because when they do, it's such a foundational piece of the app that like when that breaks, it doesn't feel good, because it throws a wrench in this system that like you really need to have working everywhere. And unfortunately, like we've had bugs where it was with like we bumped to get new things and then it has broken like dragging on a bottom sheet or something, like that's not something that you're probably testing comprehensively, if at all. And so it could really be a challenge to make sure that you're covering the necessary things with tests. But at least you start somewhere, and then you can get a feeling for how it's going, how much value it provides, and then whether you want to ramp it up, change what you're focusing on betas, or roll it back. It's not prescriptive, so it's just having the knowledge that you can do this and that it has a lot of potential upside should hopefully help people make informed decisions as to what they can tolerate.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Jake,
Well,
thank you.
what are we doing next, Sebastiano?
In 2 weeks, we have Alex and Don, and we're going to be talking about Nav3, which has recently reached stable. So great time to talk about that. Again, you don't need to wait for stable, but now it is stable. And then after that, we're going on vacation again.
It's a sabbatical more than a
It's
vacation.
a sabbatical. I mean, it's gonna be a bit longer because I'm going on vacation after the Christmas break, so it's gonna take a bit
YOLO.
longer than usual. But we'll see you next year after that, and I have a couple of ideas for interesting things to get. We had to postpone the stream with Rahul about Perfetto, but that's coming at some point. There's a bunch of really cool stuff in Perfetto that is gonna show off. Like new stuff is worked on, and yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't want to promise anything because I haven't confirmed anything yet, but it's coming. Rahul has promised is coming, so that I can talk about. Jake, again, thank you very much, and yeah, thank you. That this was super interesting, and also, you have way too many libraries, man.
Yeah,
But I'm thankful that you do.
It's a problem. I have been. I don't know if you saw in the commits of that repo, but I've actually been pruning the ones that I care about down, especially since I'm no longer employed by the company, so I don't have to care about them if I don't want to.
Fair enough.
Nice.
Cool. Again, thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for bearing with us for the last 150 streams. It's super nice of you. Now that the ads are ended, we can actually say goodbye. What did you miss during the ad break? Nothing. It's fine. Have a good one, everyone.
Check the VOD.
Bye.
Ciao.